just wanted to show you like components of a window, and these are the rails, and this one here is made so that we can take it apart. It's very tightly put together, and it's aren't they? So these are the components. We have the head, the rails, top and bottom, and the stiles, the vertical pieces, and they're not just cut and glued together or pounded together. There's joinery involved in making a window, which is why it takes a little longer to repair and fix versus just a piece of framing. This one's done by a mortise and tenon, and there's the male end and the tenon, which is the female, and we put it together and we glue it. And as Barbara was mentioning before, what happens is we'll use dowels to hold them together to further help with the strength of clamping it together. So a lot of time, oftentimes we're asked to do repairs, and I know owners are surprised that our carpenters are taking too long, and they're just, they don't seem to be fabricating at the pace that they think it is. It's because, number one, I think building a window, it's really important to have all of these things in order to have a good window to work. Number one, it's selecting the wood. We're looking for vertical grain that's going in one direction from the long end to the, continuously, and they're very evenly spaced out and without knots. It helps us with the twisting, the longevity of the wood. And oftentimes what we'd like to see, and what they didn't do in the past, was they didn't do termite treating. And today, I think that's a big part of doing our windows today, is having it treated for termites. And all of that takes time because, again, it's not something that you can go down to the lumber yard and just buy. You have to hand select these woods. You have to look for the right piece. Then you have to get it treated. We have to wait for the Honolulu wood treating to treat the material. Then it has to be dried out before we work on it. So all of that is a lot of preparation time and a lot of effort to put together. I'm not much of a communication on speaking, but I think we can ask for questions now if you guys have anything that you guys had, what you wanted to ask about. Anything? Yeah, go ahead.
For your choice of woods, what about spruce or western cedar?
I beg your pardon, what was that again?
Choice of woods for repair of
Yes.
windows, spruce or western cedar?
What's common here is Douglas fir. We use Douglas fir because it's easier. Spruce is good, but it's not as available to us locally here. But it can be ordered. It just takes further time. It depends a lot on the window that's coming out. If we're just repairing a piece and it's spruce, we'd like to match it to the same so that it has the same species of wood that's entire frame's the same.
And your windows, do you normally take that back to your shop to repair them, or you try to do them on?
We prefer, the question was, do we take the windows to the shop and do it in our shop, or do we replace the windows in place? We'll do it both ways, depending on the situation and the project. Preference is to take the window off, take it back to the office. We have it set up, we have the tools there, we have everything there, and we can work it that way. But oftentimes, if we're just piecing a wood piece together to repair, we'll do it at the site, because it's not worth taking it all apart.
Yeah, so the detriment would be more of an on-site repair.
Yes, which is often the time.
If you have to, wait one moment. So the question was, so a Dutchman would be an on-site repair, and Alan confirmed that. I'm sorry.
Yes,
If you just have to replace the ropes and put the weights back on,
yes.
how do you have to take it all apart?
To replace the ropes and the weights, do you have to take the window apart?
But you
You-
don't have to take it to the shop.
No, actually, the old windows, let me bring this up a little closer. The windows prior, when we're doing with the sash, with a cord and a counterweight, on the bottom, there's usually a little cutout that the carpenter would put in there, because that's where he would access the sash, and he would do it at the end. They would put the windows in, they'd put the ropes in, the sash cords in, and they'd let it hang, open up the little opening there, pull the window all the way up, and tie the counterweight on, and put it back. As replacing would be the same thing. We'd cut it, pull it out, put the rope back in, shove it in a hole, let it drop, and then on the bottom, tie it, and put the cover back. Oftentimes, there's a little access there for the ones with the weights.
That little hole that shows the weight pocket.
The weight pocket, correct.
We find frequently that the weights are actually still there. Often they've fallen off and the ropes have broken and they're at the bottom of the pocket, so it's certainly worth trying to fish them out. Look for them before you buy new ones. This is a new double hung counterweight. They used to look like long lead bars, and now they're fancier. And they come in different weights, and you can stack them, almost like diving weights, to get them to balance exactly for the weight of your sash. Every window weighs, it's different depending on the size and the number of pieces of glass, the thickness of the glass. So it takes someone who's done it before to get that right, the right feel for the opening. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to open a window and it's just like flown up. It's because the weights are too heavy.
You know, just on that point, you know, the pulleys, those need to be replaced, where do you get them?
So the question was if the pulleys need to be replaced, where do you get them? And brand new pulley.
Oh, sorry.
Don't go away.
There we go.
You stay here. I have a couple of slides coming up, a couple of closing slides on resources, and I list a couple of hardware manufacturers. The windows that we did with Historical Way Foundation grant, we got them from Phelps. This is a Phelps brass, double hung pulley.
There's actually a website that has all of these classic parts. And I have a house, and the pulley was damaged and needed to be repaired. And I went all around the island, and there's nowhere that you could find it. But that website had the exact same pulley, so we pulled out the old one and just slotted right back in.
So the gentleman says that he had a,
Classic website, classic website.
okay.
Everything was switches to electrical switches to pulleys to weights, everything.
Okay, thank you.
Give it to
Would you? The gentleman suggests a resource, a website, Classic Homes. He'll provide it, Andrea or myself, with the website. I have a few in the upcoming section, but he suggested that it's very difficult to find these pieces on island.
not difficult, it's impossible.
Right. I went to Reuse looking for hardware to bring here tonight, and they had nothing. They said that they had gotten a box of double hung pulleys, and they were gone within hours. So it's real hit or miss.
But you know, the question I have is, you know, on these glass, if they get cracked and they need to be replaced, where do you go for the glass and
Okay.
have it cut and, you know, like these panes, they're like in these frames.
Yes.
What is the best way to remove them and replace that glass pane?
So the gentleman's question is about glass replacement. I'll let Alan.
Sheridan Building Supply.
Great. The question on the glass, do you have several panes of glass in one sash, or like the picture there? Where,
They're double hung.
right,
They're like two large sheets, and they're double hung, and one frame is cracked and needs to be replaced. And then there's an interior, there's
older frames, older glass windows, you had several panes of glass or lights. And the reason for that was, number one, glass was expensive. It wasn't made here, it had to be imported, so it's expensive. And the bigger panes of glass, the bigger lights, was subject to breaking when they're shipping. Still today, the same thing. Today, however, it's not as expensive, and we're importing glass much, much easier than they used to do it before, right? So what we're doing is, if you can see the way we made this window, we created just one big opening for the window, and today we tend to use one big glass, and we'll add muttons on front and backs to simulate that same look. And yeah. I mean, but that's what we're doing. But you can still do it with the small muttons and build it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. And the good thing about that one is, in case one breaks, you just have to fix a small piece of glass versus changing the whole thing.
If you have
So-
older historic glass, there are resources. This is, and I have this information on a slide at the end, but this is Bentheim glass. I'd pass it around, but the edge is unfinished. I don't want anybody cutting themselves. But it's that seedy glass that looks like it's still wavy. So if you have an older window, especially if it's multi-pane and the rest of your glass is like that, you want to match it, because that one piece of modern glass will really stand out. It'll catch the light differently. It'll look quite different. So I have a slide with 4 different distributors, vendors that sell the seedy glass. And you can buy light restoration glass or heavy that's like crazy to look through. So you come up and take a look at it after, perhaps.
The suggestion also was Sheridan.
Sheridan Building
Build-
Supply, right where Sam's Club is, next to Kiamoku. You just take your measurements in and they'll cut you pieces of glass.
Let me,
I went there, I went everywhere.
And they couldn't do it for you?
so Alan, let me go through the rest
Sure.
of the slides, because I think that might answer a lot of their questions.
Yeah.
But I need you to come stand next to me, apparently.
Okay.
My God, there we go, thank you. So I'm gonna, we'll give everybody a chance to come up and look at this and look at the show and tell that we brought. But I just want to share a couple of resources for you. These are, and they're in your handout, there's some proven vendors for glazing and repair products, including Abatron for the restoration grade epoxies. Killian Hardware, it's an old hardware store in Philadelphia, but they ship all over the country, and they don't charge too much for shipping to Hawaii. I've used them quite a bit. Historic Glass. There's at least 4 different places where you can buy restoration glass. Bentheim is the one that I've used most frequently, and I have samples of that as well. So you can get all of the pieces that you need. Hardware. Phelps is a favorite, but their SRS has fantastic selection of window hardware. American Historic Hardware and House of Antique Hardware. I think some of this came from House of Antique Hardware. And when I was looking for photographs of hardware installations, I picked this one because my architect OCD, all of the slots and the screws were all facing the same way.
Wow.
And then window advocates. A couple of resources I passed around, a couple of books, and some papers. The websites will be here. Window Preservation Alliance. They're a great group of professionals, architects, engineers, craftspeople that have a national database of people that can work on your windows. I'll have to get Alan to join, because they're not well represented in Hawaii yet, but I'm working on that. The Window Preservation Standard Collaborative. This is a group, again, of craftsmen and professionals that got together and produced sort of standard operating procedures for window repairs, primarily for use in public bid projects, because it's very hard to get everybody to sort of bid an apples to apples window restoration method, and they've really codified it, and they're quite clear and doable. You can use them for your house too. National Center for Preservation Training and Technology, it's a branch of the National Park Service. It's actually the Federal Center for Preservation. They are in Louisiana. They hold window restoration workshops, and if there's interest, that's something that we're hoping to bring here as well. So you'd get your goggles and your gloves on, and you'd actually putty glaze windows and do some epoxy repairs and work with the carpenter on doing the retrofits. The case study project benefits from getting all their windows restored, and the people that attend learn a little bit. Who would be interested in such a thing, actually getting their hands on a sash and trying to learn to reglaze? Okay, we'll keep through Historic Hawaii Foundation. If we can bring someone out to do that, we'll certainly let everyone know. If you want to volunteer your house too, talk about that. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, I think most people are familiar with them. They have a green lab, and they've done an amazing job looking at window energy performance in retrofits and restoration projects. Just a wonderful wealth of information. I have the PDF printout floating around here. The website is there. You can download your own copy. And then Historic Hawaii Foundation, real window advocates from way back, yeah. They publish the Preservation Professional Directory. You can look in there for names of carpenters. Alan's in there, as am I, for help answering questions and such.
What is your name?
I'm Barbara Scheidler. Yes. And I think that's all we have for the slides. So now we can get back to questions.
There was another question, I guess, about glazing. You were doing glazing, the gentleman in the back. You had questions on it? Yeah, basically when you take off your glass, that was not a problem, because usually the glazing's all dried out and brittle, right? So cleaning it off and scraping it. But there's also there's a 3-point triangular glazing pin that is used to secure the glass. That's normally has to be removed. You can still buy them. The glazing points, and there's a tool to fasten that, use that to fasten back in, or you can use the old hammer and a little tap with a what do you call it, nail set, I guess. But you got to be real careful not to break the glass if you do it that way. There is a tool that shoots the 3-point metal that is to hold the glass in place. And that's the proper way to do it. Again, online, you'll have to go online, but they still use it because they still secure glass that way.
Actually, that last listed website was a website.
The first one, the Craftsman store, he's a window restorer. He has a blog, and he sells things too. And he sells the glazer's points and the little tool to set them. He sells putty. He sells all, everything that you would need to restore a window.
So how we would do it would be put a small bead of caulk against the wood, place the new glass onto it, using the glazing points, secure it in place, and then for the outside, we would use glazing putty to seal it. Glazing putty is not caulking. It's specially made putty for the glass.
And you can find all of that on that.
Right.
Yeah.
The reason for the glazing putty is it's linseed oil base. When you put it in correctly, it seals the edges and it stays rigid once it's dried. Yes?
Are those three materials available locally, or do you have to go outside
I think Sheridan, I used to go to Sheridan to get it. They had parts to do it. And there's several hardware stores. You're not going to find it in a big box office, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, so the question was, are those materials available locally? Tri-City Mill. That's what I'd say.
They do have stuff like that.
Yeah.
Haven't sold it from 1942.
They're waiting for you.
Normally, again, online would be the best place. Yes?
So I have a less than historic house, but has beautiful wood windows, sliding. They have a wood runner, triangular wood runner with the sliding windows go. And I have yet to find something that makes it smooth. Any suggestions besides beeswax?
The question.
Yeah, the question is, he has sliding wood windows, and it has a triangular guide on the bottom, wood. Now,
Very delicate, very delicate window.
typically, those are oak or something that's a little bit harder than the window. And he's asking about what to use to make it glide.
What to make it glide or what to replace it
I
with?
don't think replacing is the question, but I mean, make it, because replacing takes the whole window apart.
You can actually try bowling alley wax.
What about silicone
It doesn't
spray?
get as sticky as beeswax.
That's my problem.
I was going to mention beeswax, but
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have silicone spray.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman who made a custom shoji for us, and he had suggested Teflon tape, and I tried it on mine. I don't know if it would work for everybody, but it worked on mine.
So
I have
she's
that same thing.
suggesting Teflon tape
I had to get it on
for
mine.
the glides, the slides.
You can get Teflon spray too.
Or Teflon spray, or silicone spray.
Yeah, that Teflon tape for the
Right.
Teflon spray was
May I ask
surprising.
another
I don't know about
question
the
since I got my
little.
mouth open now? You touched on all these beautiful windows, but you've never mentioned screens, and most of these windows have screens. And to do it the way you're talking, unless you have a really prized historic house, those screens are incredibly expensive, especially when they're 5-foot wide, single screens. Anybody make them without being, end of the earth cost?
You know what we've been doing lately? I don't know, have you been, we make an aluminum screen, like a standard aluminum City Mill screen, and we rabbet the wood frame so it fits in to the wood frame. So from the exterior, it looks like your historic screen, but from the inside, you don't see it because you have the window sash that you're looking at from the interior. You can, and it's easily manufactured and very easily
That's
replaced.
what I want you to say. I want you to say it's okay to put the aluminum, if you match the lines, nobody will ever notice on the
But
second
we
story.
put it, but what we do is we cut out a channel of the wood frame, and we set the aluminum screen into the wood screen frame. So it looks like a wood,
The problem is the wood frame.
Yeah.
5-foot frames, 75 years old, tend to be a little bit wobbly and deteriorated. And
it's okay to remake your
the other
frame.
resource you didn't, when you're talking about master craftsman, you're talking incredibly expensive replacement screens on this thing. $500-600 a screen at least.
For the big
Correct?
ones.
Is that fair to say that?
I've got to be cautious what I say here because they're doing a lot of fake wood screens that you can use today, but I don't know if Barbara's going to approve of it.
I know historic house, I wouldn't think of it.
Yeah, we did just do that. I'm trying to remember what they used, but it was a composite lumber that they used, and it was painted.
Right, that,
Right, so, yeah, screens take a beating. They're right out there on the exterior face. They take almost all the weather.
And when they're that big, they're not very stable.
Mhm.
Even a well-made originally in 1942.
Depending on how your sash align behind the screen, you might be able to drop a small vertical, that aligns with the style of your sash behind. Like a vertical piece of wood, like a.
At a rail.
Like at a rail, yeah, at the center or third points or something of that large screen.
so when your window's fully open, where the windows overlap, you could put a rail in the front of it to stiffen up the frame. And yet it wouldn't affect the look because it'll still be the same, right?
Certainly should have been done that way originally.
Yeah. Can be added on too.
Mine are made out of redwood, my windows and screens and my outside, and so it's all lasted 90 years. The termites have eaten everything else, but not redwood.
She's suggesting that her screens and sash are made of redwood, and they've lasted quite a long time. That's my experience, too. I have a house with redwood windows and Douglas fir casings, and they've eaten all the trims, but the sash, thank goodness, are okay. So they're a little soft. That's the only thing about the redwood, you know. So they can be a little wobbly.
I forgot how to say it. Aside from your company, and I'm guessing that you're probably extremely busy. My experience too is that sometimes either a contractor won't just, because there are things that I cannot do by myself. How can you tell if they really know what they're doing and they're going to do it right? And also, I've had trouble with a different property, finding someone who is willing to do 2 or 3 windows. They want to do 60 or 70. So, I mean, I know you guys have a great reputation. I've spoken to Kim briefly, but if we can't get you, how can you tell if someone is going to do it right, or how do you find someone who will be willing to just do a window or 2?
So the question is, how do you find someone with the skills that are willing to do just a few windows in your house rather than a large project? Before I let Alan speak, I would just like to plug Historic Hawaii Foundation's Preservation Professional Directory.
Okay.
Take a look in there.
Absolutely.
Those people have listed their names with Historic Hawaii Foundation for a reason, because
Okay.
they care about older buildings.
How I find my guys, I'll just look at their toolbox. And I can tell from the toolboxes what kinds of tools are in there, that if they can do the work or not by their care of their tools. Today's craftsmen, a lot of times it's a power saw, it's a power drill, and you know, and that's all they know how to use. And we're not, the craftsman we're looking for needs to be, you know, be able to use hand tools. They need to be able to know how to sharpen their chisels, sharpen their hand saws. Those are the tools that we're going to do on these window repairs. We're not going to need a big saw with the big motor on it. We're going to need a nice fine tooth Japanese saw that can pull and cut. And a lot of them don't even understand what that is or know what to do with it. So, I mean, you know, you can ask them to see their tools. But I think the best way to do is you need to talk to them, be comfortable with the craftsperson, and ask him if he, you know, if he does these kinds of work and willing to work on your project.
Check references.
And check references,
Yeah.
right? They're getting far into between. A lot of them are retiring, so
Yeah,
yes.
they're like gold.
I'm not that old.
There we go. There we go.
One of the problems you have in going in a historic house is
There wasn't any question. It was more of a comment. The gentleman in the back was saying that there's a lot of discoveries made when a carpenter goes through trying to do the repair work. And I guess that's what they call change orders, right? You know, because you open it up and you discover this is not what it's supposed to be. And there's a lot of the time is to do this research, try and find the right correct weight or add to it and to correct the deficiencies that is uncovered. If you've been in business here in Hawaii, you're going to find that you've never found out things in the next job. You know, it's always a new,
Always a new day.
always a new discovery, a new day.
Yeah, I had an experience with a public project. I won't really mention what it is, but we had a very, very detailed series of historic wood window restorations planned. And what we did is we asked the contractor to do one. And we did a mock-up. And the first thing he did is he went in and he cut through the mortise and tendons and tried to screw the window back together. And we realized that he wasn't the right contractor, and we pulled all the windows out of the project. So before they could do damage to others. So I'd say watch the first one very carefully, so, as well.
Yes.